Hello, hello, and welcome to the 7th of A Safe Space. I can't believe it. 7 episodes. Woo! And this one's going to be a doozy. Are you ready for this? We have Chris Shoofel here from Chris in the Classroom. He has won Teacher of the Year and started an anti-bullying campaign where he went around to different schools and has developed that into a way to teach emotions to children, which I'm so excited to talk about it with him. I can't believe it. If I wasn't doing what I was doing right now, I'd be doing what he's doing. So I'm so excited that he's here. I can't wait to talk to him. First things first, though, let's talk about some wins. Who has wins for this week? Mine was pretty huge, pretty big deal. I would love it if you would share your wins with me while I was talking. I want to know about your wins. It's really important to acknowledge this. We'll just say this again. Maybe I'll do this every week. I don't know. Wins are so, so important to acknowledge. If you don't acknowledge that you are growing, then you might stop trying to grow. And so it's really important to remember that even little tiny things that you have had successes in this week are really worth mentioning. So I'm working on really, really big stuff. And so my win for the week is that personal stuff. Here we go. Right off the bat. I have a hard time showing anger. I am really embarrassed by the way that I show anger. I was told as a kid that the way that I did it was wrong. And so what I chose to do is to try to stifle that inside my body. Because kind of like, if anybody read my post about like teaching kids this week, it was that I think that we want our teenagers to talk to us, but we haven't actually taught them yet how to talk about feelings, which is such an interesting problem. You know, we tell 2-year-olds, no, you're not supposed to, if you have a fit, if you have a tantrum, you're supposed to go to your room and hide and be alone because emotions aren't supposed to be shown. And that's the lesson that we teach, and that's the lesson that I absorbed. And so what I decided to do was to just not show anger. And I actually talked to a lot of people who have this exact same thing, especially, I think, men. I think that a lot of men have a really hard time showcasing anger because men are viewed as scary sometimes and intimidating. The words for me are dramatic, loud, aggressive, rude, sarcastic, but I think men have different ones that they're worried about, but it all lends itself to the same thing. I think that it's inappropriate to be angry in front of you. And so I've really been looking at that because, and I would love to talk about this with Shoof later, but I think that if you do not talk about your feelings and process them appropriately, then what's going to happen is they have to come out. They have to. And so over time, I developed anxiety because I have all this energy in my body that I'm not expressing. So my win for the week is that I expressed anger, but I did it in a way that made me feel comfortable. Well, I was expressing anger, so I wasn't comfortable, but I was the most comfortable that I could have been while expressing anger. I got very, very angry at 8:00 in the morning because I had just gotten home from work, and so I hadn't slept in a really long time. I had been on 3 in a row. So I'd worked 3 12s overnight, and now it's 8:00 in the morning. It's my son's birthday, and I just got set off. And I think that it had to do with the fact that, one, I was exhausted. When you are stressed, your brain is going to show you things to be stressed out about. Your brain is trying to keep you alive. And so if you're tired and you see a potential danger, your brain is going to go, oh, that's something that could hurt you because your body is stressed out, and that's what your brain does. It is a defense mechanism. It is good, but you have rational thought. And so you don't necessarily need to listen to all of the things that your brain tells you. But it was too late for me at that point. I came in, I was furious. I immediately went to my husband and started talking to him loudly, I'm sure, but I'm just like, can you believe this is happening? Oh my God, this is so unfair. This is ridiculous. I'm so mad. And he doesn't really have much to say because this isn't really how we talk anymore. So he wasn't sure what to do with me. He has issues with women yelling. And so between me and him, we're no good for one another. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go. I need to express my anger without people. And I left. I got in my car and I drove. I didn't even know where I was going. And I cried and I screamed and I yelled and I got on Facebook and I sang songs and I texted my sister and I got it out. I found a little private space where nobody could find me in my car and I hid and I gave myself permission to hide because that's what I was choosing to do. And maybe one day this will lead to being able to calmly expressing my anger in a way that makes me feel comfortable doing it in front of people. I'm not there yet, but I hope to be. That is my goal. And I think that this week that was a really big step. And so that is my win. I would love to hear about your wins. So I'm not going to talk anymore because I'm so excited about our guest. So I'm going to bring him on real quick and I'm going to have him introduce himself. So we have Chris, who likes to be called Shoof, Shooful, coming on right now. And so I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to let him do it. But he has won the Teacher of the Year award, which I did not know, and I'm so impressed by that. But I guess a few years back, he was a teacher, and he decided that he didn't want to do classroom stuff anymore, and so he created this program where he goes around school to school to school and teaches children in an assembly type form how to manage their emotions and how to talk about their feelings. And he includes the teachers and the parents and all of that. So I'm so excited to introduce him. And for some reason, it's not adding him. It keeps saying adding. No answer from the live video guest. That's what it said. It said adding for like 30 seconds probably while I was talking. And then, so we're trying to bring Chris on. I'm so sorry. Here we go. In the meantime, oh, here we go. Connecting. Chris!
Hey! Hey!
What are we looking at?
All right. Are we good?
Oh, yeah, that
Not
looks
good.
great. That's awesome.
Oh, hey,
Thanks for being on today.
It was probably better the other way. Holy cow. This
has been
wow.
rough. This has been a rough one, but that's okay.
Hey, you know what?
We roll with the punches around here. This is a safe space.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So, Chris, Shoof, can you introduce
Yes.
yourself for me, please? I don't like to introduce my guests. I like them to do it.
Okay. So my name is Chris Shoofel, but all my friends just call me Shoof. So wherever you are right now, just give me a what's up, Shoof?
What's up, Shoof?
Appreciate that. Love it. Yeah, and I was a teacher for 10 years. Everybody say, wow.
Wow.
And I taught the greatest subject there is. I taught music. And I say music's the greatest subject ever for 3 reasons. 1, my classes were always a ton of fun. 2, I never gave homework. And 3, I never had to count past 4. Because, I mean, that's just music. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it.
That's a good reason.
I married a math teacher. My wife was a math teacher. So, you know, we complement each other really, really well. But yeah, like you said, you know, I was teaching, and probably about year 7 of teaching, I started to see all this stuff that was coming down from up above about teaching kids how to handle bullying and how to handle mean behavior from others. And I saw it not work. Mm-hmm. And it was to the point where I was that kind of teacher where my kids knew they could come to me about any and everything. And they did. Mm-hmm. I mean, I mean, so many stories. If you can
Yeah,
dream it up,
I can imagine.
I probably heard it all. And it got to the point where, you know, I was looking at all this stuff, and you know, when you're talking about bullying and stuff like that, and the stuff they're teaching in schools, you know, they're teaching, you know, ignore it, walk away, tell an adult, or you know, grandpa's advice, you know, let's take it outside,
Beat it.
3:30, we're gonna handle it, you know. And I saw all that stuff not work, and I won't go into the whole story of how I figured it out, but you know, ignore it. Well, you can't solve a problem that you ignore. Walk away. Well, you can't always run from your problems. Besides, if you're trying to get away from mean behavior and you're walking away, you know, they're going to follow you.
Yeah.
And if they see that it's getting to you, they're going to follow you. They're going to keep doing it. Tell an adult. Well, I was the adult and I was given the same old tired advice, and kids were telling me it's not working.
Right.
And I was like, well, go tell your counselor at school. And they were like, I don't know my counselor the way I know you. And that's when I knew something had to change. And of course, like grandpa's advice, 3:30 after school, you know, laws prevent that. Obviously, it may have worked, you know, 20, 30 years ago, but the way laws are written now, it's not going to work anymore.
Yes.
So I started down this journey. I got hooked up with a couple of guys, a guy named Brooks Gibbs and a guy named Jeff Veely. And we all kind of came together. And I started Chris in the Classroom, where our focus, it started on bullying and helping kids to be resilient and understand that, look, there's always going to be mean people. There's always going to be stuff that doesn't go your way. There's always going to be people who call you names, who leave you out of things, who give you a little push or a shove every now and then. And spread rumors. There's always going to be people who do that, but we can't run from that, and we can't fight back all the time.
So what could we do?
The best way, I mean, honestly, and I've got books and books and books of psychology that, you know, that supports it, is the best way to do it is to understand that not everybody's going to like you and not everybody's going to want to be your friend. And people say, Shoof, you need to be more positive. And I say, I'm positive. Not everyone's going to like you. Yeah. And not everyone's going to want to be your friend.
And that's okay.
That is perfectly fine.
That's fine.
We don't have to seek approval from everybody else. The thing is to be resilient. That's my favorite word. I love it so much I put it on all my clothes. The thing is to be resilient, to understand that not everything is going to go your way. Not everybody's going to like you. But when you're resilient, you're strong here, which we'll talk about in a minute, and how to develop that, then you know, you essentially become bulletproof. You gain that thick skin and you start to shed that entitlement mentality of everybody has to be kind to me and everything has to go my way.
Yes.
And then once you do that, you get to the point where you're mentally and emotionally stable and solid. Then you can move to step 2, which is to use the golden rule. And I do a little role play game, you know, when I do assemblies or even when I'm working one-on-one with kids, I do a little role play game that helps show them, one, how a negative response to a situation actually makes it worse. And 2, how using the golden rule, treating them the way you want to be treated, no matter how they treat you first, actually helps you gain control of the situation and shut them down.
Oh, I love it.
So,
talk
anyway.
us through the method, the ABC method, because this is my favorite thing in the whole world.
Cool. So there was a psychologist named Dr. Albert Ellis, E-L-L-I-S, so famous in the psychology world. If you have no idea who he is, you need to go look him up. He was a bit of a weirdo, not going to lie, but his psychology stuff was solid.
Best ones are.
Yeah, that's very true.
I know.
So he explained it probably the best way I've ever heard. So if you think of ABC, and I did a video on this, just go to my website. Can I plug my website?
Yes,
I don't
please.
want to
plug everything.
Okay. Just go to chrisintheclassroom.com. There's videos and stuff on my website. There's a video on my website that talks about this. But Albert Ellis described the way our emotions happen in an ABC format. A, there's an activating event. Something happens. Like you find $1 on the ground, or you stub your toe, or somebody calls you a name, or somebody gives you a compliment, whatever. Life happens. An activating event happens. That's just life. You can't control that. And if you think you can, you're wrong. I'm sorry. And that's where a lot of people run into trouble too, is we try to control our outside circumstances.
Yes.
And that's what ends up driving us crazy.
Yes.
Going into, you mentioned a little bit ago, rational thoughts and irrational thoughts. An irrational thought is thinking you can control the world around you. Sorry, you can't.
Yep.
Anyway, there's an activating event. Stuff happens to you. You can't control it. The next thing we observe is C, and that is your emotional consequence. It's your feelings. It's your reaction. It's what you feel. And so many times, and I fall into this trap too, and I see some of y'all. Thank you, Ben, for putting that in there. If y'all are in the chat, drop me a yes in the chat if this has ever been you. But the next thing, we so many times blame our emotions on the stuff that happens to us. You blame your feelings on the stuff that happens. And I know that's people. I want to see a bunch of yeses in the chat. Because, and if you're not, you're lying. But just being real.
It's true.
But, you know, we say, you know, that person made me mad, or what that person said to me made me upset. And we blame our feelings on the stuff that happens to us. Yeah. But Dr. Albert Ellis put it so plainly that that is not true. Because in between A and C is the letter
B.
B. B stands for your belief system. Or as I tell kids, you know, like kindergarten, elementary school, I tell them it stands for your brain, your belief system. And that includes everything that you've been taught, your beliefs, your preconceived notions, stuff that's already up here. It's how you've been programmed, essentially. This is this is the most powerful computer in the world.
For sure.
And it's how you've been programmed. Yep. So really, the way things happen is stuff happens to you. It runs through a filter, your brain, your beliefs, and based on what's already up here, determines what happens in here.
Yes.
So, for example, somebody calls you a name, and you think that person has no right to say that to me. They have to be kind. That's the worst name anybody could ever call me.
That's mean. That's rude. That's unfair.
Exactly. Or, you know, just anything in life, you get into a fight with your spouse, or just somebody cut you off in traffic. Whatever is up here about that situation is going to determine this.
How you feel about it. Right. I teach the exact same thing. It's so funny that you do this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it can be applied to any situation. Yes. I recently started doing a new talk, just helping kids kind of come to terms with Rona and school shutdowns and parents being out of work and just all the negative surrounding them. And it really all centers around that ABC pattern. And if you can change your B, if you can change your thinking, you can change the way you feel. And I know some people might be like, oh, that's frou-frou stuff. And like, no, it's true.
Yeah.
If you can change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. I break it down for kids this way, and then I'll shut up.
Yes, please shut up. That was the point.
This is the way I break it down for kids, like the littles.
Yeah.
In order for something to break your heart, it has to go through your brain.
Yeah.
I'll say it again. Oh. In order for something to break your heart, it has to go through your brain.
Yeah.
And you can set up a stop sign or roadblock, whatever imagery you want to use for kids or whatever.
Yeah.
You can set that up in here and say, no, it's not going any further than here. And if it is going to get through, it's only going to be positive.
Yeah.
So
my sister just said, it's not frou-frou, it's true.
Thank you, Jesse.
Who, by the way, follows you, and we didn't even know it. Isn't that hilarious?
Oh, holy cow, love it.
I texted her that you were going to be on. You were at the wedding. And so everybody that I text is like, oh, yeah, I've met him before. And my sister was like, I follow him. Is that how I know him? He was at the wedding? You're like famous, Shoof.
Yeah.
You're you know what? Can I tell you this? I've had my husband, my sister, and my best friend on this show, and I have never been so excited to have a guest.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that hilarious?
Meanwhile, I just changed an explosion of a dirty diaper 20 minutes ago.
So how many children do you have? You have
I got
three,
three.
right?
My oldest is about to be 8 next week.
Mm-hmm.
My son just turned 5 in October, and then my youngest is going to be 2 in April. So.
Okay, so do you use this with your kids?
All the time.
Right. Can you give parents a little tip of like I have a lot of friends right now who have young children about your age, because we're the same age essentially, and they have tantrums. And I'm hearing sentences, I know, right? I know.
What?
And they call me and they're like, something's wrong with my kid. And I'm like, nothing's wrong with your kid. Kids have tantrums. One friend said to me, they have a 4-year-old, almost 5, and he says that she's being disrespectful to him. And I'm like, a 4-year-old? I don't know. I think maybe she just doesn't know what to do with her feelings. So my question to you is, as a parent, this is what everybody wants to hear. If your child is having a tantrum or having a loud emotion, what do you do as the parent?
What do I do, or what should I do?
You can give us both. Both would teach.
Okay, no. So here's the thing. You have to understand. There's three basic kinds of thoughts that cause somebody, doesn't matter what age, that causes somebody to act out in a negative tantrum, whatever sort of way. That causes somebody just to have those negative outward emotions. And kind of playing into what you were saying earlier about rational thoughts, irrational thoughts. So the first thought that you have to look for is a thought about themselves. And usually it means they want to perform well or get approval from others. They want to perform well or get approval from others. And if that is not being fulfilled, if they have that expectation or that demand and it's not being met, we can all desire that. I want to perform well. I would like to, I'm going to do stand-up comedy tonight at a club right down the road because I live in Nebraska and things are actually open. But anyway.
That's beside the point.
But like, it's okay to desire those things, to want to do things well and to receive approval from others. That's okay to desire, but when it becomes a demand and those demands aren't met, that's when the tantrums happen. So you have to watch out about expecting things from themselves. Next, you have to look at, are they expecting or demanding things from others? And usually it just means they want to be treated fairly or protected from pain, frustration from reaching a goal, things like that.
Okay.
So are they, do they feel unfairly treated, or are they trying to do something and you're not letting them? That's another reason why they could be acting out. So self, others, or life.
Okay.
Do they feel like life needs to be comfortable, or life needs to give them what they want? And if that expectation or demand isn't being met, they'll act out. So really, like, simplest way to boil it down is, are they trying to perform well, do something well, and they're not living up to their own expectation? Do they expect fair treatment from somebody else and that's not being met? Or do they feel that life is just unfair? Once you can figure out which one, and when you're dealing with kids, it's usually pretty simple. In my house, we have this thing, I don't know if any of the other parents do, but in my house, Aaron, yes, this is all the same for middle schoolers. Everything, this is across the board. Great question, Aaron.
Even grown-ups, Aaron.
Oh yeah, okay, what I'm going to tell you right now, the stuff that I'm talking about, it works for kindergartners, it works for Karens. So just put it.
Man, that's a whole other
If there's
episode.
anybody named Karen, if there's anybody on here named Karen, I apologize. I don't mean you, but just the Karens out there. But no, all this stuff, this is across the board. Doesn't matter age, gender, whatever. It's all the same. Because we're all wired relatively the same.
Right.
So once you figure out, in my house, we have this thing, I don't know if anybody else does, it's called Sibling Rivalry. I don't know.
I still
Uh,
have it, and I'm 37.
okay. And you don't live with your siblings anymore.
Nope.
Believe it or not.
Nope.
Yeah. So we, so I mean, but anytime it's, you know, it's easy to tell sometimes what the issue is. Why are they acting out that way? And if not, all you have to do is just ask a couple questions.
Yes.
What happened? That's a toughie. What happened?
Yes. Thank you. If you can
Just
mention
ask
it,
the
you can
question.
manage it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And you know what? We'll talk about the emotional spectrum now, I guess.
Okay.
When somebody is, there's 4 basic emotions that people have. And I've got diagrams and stuff on this that I wish I could share screen, but I can't. But I'll put a site in the chat here before we end that everybody can go and get some of these diagrams and see what I'm talking about. But there's 4 basic emotions that people have: mad, sad, meh, which is kind of like indifferent, or glad.
Right.
There's four basic emotions: mad, sad, meh, or glad.
Got it.
When you are mad and when you are fired up and you are blinded by rage and anger, hatred, revenge, jealousy, what you have, just all this stuff, you can answer in the chat, drop it in the chat. When you have all that stuff going on, are you ready to learn a solution?
No.
Yes or no?
Absolutely not. Did you hear my win this week? That I showed
yes,
anger?
I did. Yeah.
I showed anger, but I had to be all by myself. And Ben kept saying, I didn't know what to say because anything I would have said, you would have argued with me about. And that's absolutely true. I needed to just be mad.
Yeah.
Because that's what mad does. It's not rational.
Exactly. It's not. And that's where the majority of those irrational thoughts come from. And the thing is, you know, when somebody is mad, they're not ready to learn, you know, and I've learned this too over the last 8 years because I'm married, you know,
I wish you'd heard that, baby.
and I'm going to say, I hate to make it an absolute, but I'm going to. Almost every husband out there has fallen victim to, oh, wife is not happy. Mm-hmm. Let me offer solution. That's just how men's and women's brains tend to be different most of the time. Is guys, we see the problem, we want to fix it. Mm-hmm. And I'll just say generally speaking, because I know there's exception to every rule.
Of course.
Rachel, yes, absolutely. Emotional brain on, logic brain off. Absolutely, you're totally right. Guys want to we see a problem, we want to fix it. That's just how guy brain works most of the time. Female brains, women's brains have that more of that emotional component to it where, you know, women in general want and need to process through those emotions at each stage and each level. And it's a process. And you know what? Sometimes it takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes 5 days.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You don't think that men have to go through that emotional process like women do?
We do, but we have different ways of doing it.
Sure.
And a lot of times too, I'll say this, men get really good at burying those emotions. And sometimes they go away and sometimes they blow up.
Yeah. For sure.
So, but everybody works through these emotions. It's just, the speed is different. The methods are different, but everybody works through these emotions. Simply put.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we have mad.
Right.
And mad, you're having those irrational thoughts. Now, the thing about being angry is anger can't last forever. Anger is just tiring.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And crying too. Crying's exhausting. After a couple minutes of crying, you want a nap.
Exactly. Your body cannot, like physically, your body cannot stay that rigid, fixed mindset anger. You can't, like physically, you can't stay there. You can't
sustain it. Right.
Yeah. You can still harbor those feelings and those thoughts, but you cannot stay flaming red anger.
Yes.
So we want to move away from anger as quick as possible. And we want to get to sad. You cannot just go angry to glad. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
So we want to go from angry to sad. We want to go from mad to sad.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
You got to ask yourself this question. How could this be worse?
Okay.
Or if you're dealing with a kid.
How could this be worse?
Yeah, or if you're dealing with a kid, or if you're dealing with a spouse, or if you're dealing with somebody else, and they are flaming angry.
Okay.
The way to get them off that ledge is, how could this be worse? And you cannot answer it for them, because it's in that critical thinking. It's in that time of, just being able to reflect, to see that, you know what, maybe it lowers their threshold of rock bottom. It gets them to see more globally. It gets them to see that, you know what, at least I'm not this, or at least this. Adults do it all the time. Heaven forbid any of us have ever been in a car accident, or we know somebody's been in a car accident and walked away from it. What's the first thing we say?
Thank God we're okay.
Yeah, thank God we're okay. Yeah. Man, that could have been a lot worse.
That could have been worse.
Exactly. Yeah. See, we do that automatically as adults. Kids don't, they're not there yet. Just, the brain hasn't fully developed yet. Kids aren't there yet.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of help them. Ask them the question. Don't answer it for them.
Okay.
How could this be worse?
How could this be worse? And then that gets them to think critically and get to sad. And then how do we get to meh?
So now you're at sad. Still not ready to learn yet, because, now you're not like, oh, this can't happen. This shouldn't happen. Now you're just like, oh man, it could be worse, but I wish it wouldn't have happened. Right. Now you're more in like a wishing preference stage. Still not ready to be worked with yet, because you can't work with a kid that's crying. Yeah. They're not ready to learn. So how do you get from sad to meh? Just kind of like, it's whatever. You ask them, why won't this matter in the future?
Ooh, okay. Why won't this matter in the future? Because what are some of the answers? Can you give me some examples?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the general purpose behind the question is it gets them to think, again, more globally. Yeah. It gets them to see that, this too shall pass. This is not going to last forever.
Right.
So
like the critical thinking piece of, it doesn't matter what the answer is necessarily, but just thinking outside of their emotion at the moment.
It gets them to think outside of the here and now.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. And when I'm working with kids in schools, or, whatever, one-on-one or whatever, and when it comes to, being mistreated at school, or, by a sibling, whatever, like, why won't this matter in the future? And a lot of times the answer is something like, well, they were picking on so-and-so 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm just the popular kid this week.
Yeah.
And next week they'll be on to another kid. Uh-huh. Hey, great. Exactly. You see that it's not going to last forever.
Okay, cool.
So now we're at meh. Now we're just kind of like, yeah, it happened. It stunk, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And now we can start to work. We can work with meh. Meh is an okay place to be.
Yeah, you can talk rationally to meh.
Exactly. Uh-huh. But we don't want to play to not lose. We want to play to win.
Right.
We want to actually be, this is going to sound weird, but we actually want to be glad that this garbage happened. Uh-huh. And it's possible.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah. And that's when you ask, how could this actually be a good thing? Mm-hmm. How could this, what good can come from this? And a lot of times, and this is the teacher in me.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the answer is going to center around something like, well, I learned what not to do, or I learned what to do.
Right.
Or, whatever. And in my opinion, again, I've done this with hundreds and hundreds of kids. In my opinion, if you can at least walk away from something with a learning experience, I'd call that a win.
Yeah. Well, my show, we start with wins every week for this purpose exactly. Yeah. And it is because I think it's really important to acknowledge your wins, because if you don't acknowledge them, you might not even know that you had it.
Absolutely.
You might just be thinking, like this is what I hear all the time. Oh my gosh, every day. If someone does something and it is seamless, the people say, well, that was easy.
Yeah.
And it tickles me pink because that is not true.
Right?
You found it easy. That's actually what's true. It wasn't
Yes.
easy, but for some reason, I don't know what it is about humans, but we do not want to take responsibility for the good or the bad. And so when there's bad stuff, we blame it on other people. And when there's good stuff, we blame it on we say it's because of other reasons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I say, let's just talk about all of this, because the more that we talk about it, the better off we are, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're totally right. And those three questions, how could this be worse? Why won't this matter in the future? And how could this be a good thing? I'll share a quick story. I was doing a teacher training at a school district in Kansas, and room was full of about 50, 60 teachers. And I'm going through all this and how to help kids and all this. And I get to the questions. I get through the questions. Teacher stands up in the middle of my training. She stands up and she's like, I don't believe this.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh, like, what, yeah, do you have a question?
What's up?
Yeah, like, what's going on? And she's like, well, that first question, how could this be worse? She's like, it's like you're comparing yourself to somebody else's worst. And it's like you're making light of how they have it worse than you. I was like, no. I'm like, think about it this way for a second. You have something bad happen to you. The best way to start to deal with that is to, one, realize that it could have been worse. Maybe you point to an example of somebody you know, maybe you don't. But just to understand that it could be worse. But also, it's a lesson in gratitude. To understand that, you know what, hey, maybe I don't have it as bad as so-and-so over there. Maybe I don't have it as bad as it could be. And then once you go through that process and dig yourself out of that hole, then you are more ready and equipped to go to that other person that you maybe thought about and said, hey, let me help you through X, Y, and Z. After that training was over, she sat down, by the way.
Yeah.
After the training was over, another teacher came up to me. She said, Shoof, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. So glad you could be here, all this. She said, everything you said with those three questions was spot on. And I said, okay. She was getting like teary-eyed. I'm like, are you okay? And she said, can I share a story with you? I said, yeah, please. She was in her mid-50s, and she said, when I was a kid, she said, my father was an abusive alcoholic. And she said, my mother was just complacent. She didn't get involved. She just stood back and let it happen. She said, about 6 years ago, I started therapy, counseling. So she was about 50 when she started counseling to get through all this stuff in her childhood.
Man.
She said that one of the first things her therapist asked her was, after they mentioned it, if it's mentionable, it's manageable.
Yeah.
I believe that was Mr. Rogers.
It was Mr. Rogers. Very good.
But she said once they talked about what happened, what the problem was, she said the first thing her therapist asked her was, how could this be worse? How could it have been worse?
No kidding.
She said, Chris, it took 6 months to answer that question. I said, 6 months? What did you do for 6 months going to therapy once a week? She said, I would walk in, we'd exchange pleasantries, we'd talk about the week, and then the therapist would say, okay, back to your childhood. How could it have been worse? She said, for 6 months, we sat in silence in the appointments. I'm like, wow. You're paying a therapist to sit in silence? She's like, I wasn't allowed to move on until I came to terms with that.
Yeah.
And she said, I finally came up with the answer after 6 months. I said,
what was it?
I know. I was like, you got me on the,
yeah.
You got me.
Right.
Like, what was it? Like, you can't just hold it. And she's like, I finally figured out. How could this be worse? My father was an abusive alcoholic. my mother could have been the same way. I still,
You're in a safe space, Shoof.
I still get, I don't cry, but the eyeballs sweat a
I
little
understand. Yeah,
bit.
me too.
But, and as soon as she said that, like, I hugged her, like, we just both hugged.
Oh.
And like, we didn't let go for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And after that, you know, I was like, okay, what happened after that?
Yeah.
And she said, after I could answer that question, she asked me, why won't this matter
Mm-hmm.
in the next 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
And she said it took her about a month to be able to answer that. And then after that, she said, how could this have been a good thing? And it took her about two weeks to answer that. Once you get past that, how could this be worse, and understand that it could have been worse, so many times the other two questions just go boom, boom.
Yeah. Look, my son is watching. My son just said you'd think you'd stop going after 6 months of not talking. And that's such a great point.
For sure.
Because if you stop, you don't succeed.
Exactly. And she was so ready to be done with the junk. She was so ready.
Totally.
And along the way, the counselor did keep encouraging her and saying, you know, once you answer this question, I promise you it's going to get better.
Yeah.
But we have to answer this question, and I cannot help you do it.
Right. Right.
So.
Anyway. That is so good. And it ties into a lesson that I'm trying to teach, which is it is okay to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's how you grow.
That is how you grow. Yes. Actually, it teaches you things. And so when you notice that you are uncomfortable, your body is physically uncomfortable, because that's where I start, is the physical feelings. Because for me, I feel like you have such a great audience of like 6-year-olds. You know what I mean? They are like sponges looking to be absorbing information. I get 40-year-old women who are like, this is what's true. And I'm like, well, could we just open up our minds just like a little bit?
Yeah.
And maybe look at this a different way. And I think that is right. And so this is one of the ways I'm choosing to do it, is if you get comfortable being uncomfortable, that is all that is your neurons firing and sending signals to your brain. That's all that it is. Yeah. And if you can look at those as clues, you can learn from them, so that even really negative situations could be positive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, like you said, it's all in how you look at it. Yeah. There's power in perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I'm gonna copyright that. Hang on.
I think that one's taken.
Might be.
All right, Shoof, before we let you go, could you please tell us how to find you and what you like? My sister asked me last night, how do I get him at my kid's school?
Great. And by the way, I just want to say this. Ben and I, your husband and I, we were talking, like we've been boys for so long.
Yes.
Like we're practically brothers.
Yeah.
One, you need to force him into us having a scoundrel reunion. Two, we need to make it happen. But two, when he and I talked a couple weeks ago, we talked for probably an hour just about self-talk. So I want to come back on at some point and talk about self-talk.
Yes.
And how powerful that is.
This has been huge. I mean, people are saying like, I'm going to rewatch this a lot of times. I had people say to me, I have to work Saturday, but I'm going to watch this in post because I have to learn how to talk to my children.
Sure.
People are so excited about this. So yes.
Sure.
Let's
and
talk
what we're
about
going to do too,
2.
friends, is so everything of mine is on chrisintheclassroom.com. Ben, if you want to put that in the chat, chrisintheclassroom.com. Everything about me is up there. I've got lesson videos. They're free. I've got so much free content on there. I've got counselor Shaylee. I see you on here. I love you so much, Shaylee. You're awesome. I did some virtual work. Shaylee is a counselor in North Dakota. and I did some work with her school virtually. I did virtual assemblies. I did teacher training. I did a parent night. It was awesome. Shaylee actually saw me speak at the North Dakota Counselors Conference last year when we could actually do stuff in person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything, there's so much free stuff on my website, videos, blogs and articles. I have a podcast. The audios are on my website. Or if you go to iTunes, Chris in the Classroom on iTunes. Actually, we're going to rip this audio and I'm going to put it on my podcast channel.
Yes, we are.
So, you know, if you don't have time to sit down and watch the video, just go to my podcast channel, Chris in the Classroom on iTunes, and you can listen to it back over and over again. So
my believe it or not, my babysitter from childhood, Jessie Bells, is on here. She is a teacher in Maryland.
I see her.
Yes, and she's asking, do you come to Maryland?
Yeah, so Jesse, here's the deal. I actually grew up in Baltimore. I'm a born and raised Baltimorean. I bleed Old Bay. So that's just how we roll. But yeah, so I do come to Maryland. It depends on what the schools decide on doing. So I can come out for live assemblies. I've done that as well. We can do virtual. It just depends on whatever the schools are doing. But yes, I can accommodate anything throughout the school year. Whatever the schools are doing, we can definitely make that work.
So you are doing, you're doing like this kind of stuff, like digital.
Yeah.
Digital
like
assemblies, is that a thing? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a program, a software where I can actually like broadcast live, kind of like this, but I stream it live to a web page, and then I can actually bring guests on. So like I have student volunteers that I send them like a backstage link, kind of like we have going on here, side by side, whatever. Super interactive. I do, teachers know what Kahoot is. Kahoot, it's like a polling system or game, like a game that everybody watching can participate. So it's super interactive. It's super fun. I can bring in videos, share screen, all that stuff. It's super fun. Or if you have me come out to your school, it's like essentially a stand-up comedy show with the lessons that we've talked about today, all intertwined with that.
Is there a way to see your stand-up? Speaking of.
Not yet, because I'm still ironing out some of it. Yeah, as soon as I can get a good video of it, I'll be posting it. Don't worry.
Well, that's wonderful.
So,
okay, so I'm going to let you go, but I feel like
can I plug one more thing?
Of course, yes. Go ahead. Keep
going. Okay, awesome. On my website, chrisintheclassroom.com, go to my store. I've written so many books. I have a whole series of children's books. Not sure if y'all can see them. It's called the Schoolhouse Heroes Children's Book Series. It teaches kids how to deal with all kinds of negative behavior from others, from pushing to shoving to exclusion to cyber stuff to rumors and foul language and name calling, things like that. I've got another one that I'm slowly but surely working on that's going to teach about how to deal with sibling rivalry. Yeah. Some people have been like, why didn't you come out with that one first?
Yeah.
Whatever. So that's for the littles. I have a book for teens. It's called P.S. I Bully You, because a lot of people don't know the word bully actually meant best friend back in the 1500s. So let's bring it back old school. That's for teens. I've got a book for parents. It's called The Big Bad B Word. It's all about how to deal with, or it's all about, for parents and adults, how to build resilient kids and dealing with all that.
How did you write all these books?
How?
Yes. You just wrote them and we're like, here, how does that even come about? I guess this is a whole different episode, isn't it?
Well, I'll give you the short answer. You guys know me. You guys know my heart. For me, it's, I open the skylight, he dumps it in, and I just spit it out. Yeah. I'll just put it that way. Oh. That's just me. And then lastly, we came up with a card game. It's called Squabbles. It's a card game that actually teaches kids how to respond in different similar situations. But of course, you know me, some of the situations are like, something like, I flicked a booger on you because I thought it was funny, and you have to figure out how to
How to
respond to it. I mean,
respond. Ooh.
I mean, it's some pretty silly situations, but that's on my website as well. We are so limited on these right now, though. We're like, the stock is seriously running down, and I don't know when we're getting more in.
Yeah, and I need one now.
So I'll hold one out for you. And the shirts are available on the website as well if you want your own Resilient Heart shirt. So anyway, all that, it's all on my website, chrisintheclassroom.com. Shaylee, will you bring me a pack of kid books and let me know what I owe you? Okay, Shaylee, because I'm going up to North Dakota in a couple weeks. Shaylee, here's the deal on that. I have another shipment coming. I'm hoping that it gets here by the time I leave. If not, I will definitely mail them out to you. No worries. And the cards, I can bring the cards. So anyway,
Chris,
that's that.
Shoof.
chrisintheclassroom.com. Tyson, can I just say this?
Sure.
You are awesome. You are doing such an amazing thing with your life coaching and with reaching adults and all this stuff. I mainly work with kids and parents and teachers to help better the lives of kids. I'm so glad that you are doing what you're doing to reach adults.
I feel the exact same way about you. I can't believe it.
Geez.
I just think that you are changing the world, and I think that that is really, really cool. And in any way that you and I can collaborate to change more lives and help more people and solve more emotional issues, then I say let's do it.
Bring it.
So
let's do it.
You're on my team, man. If you need anything, you let me know. We'll definitely have you back on. For sure. I think this is going to get a very big response. It already has. So I appreciate you very much. I'm going to let you go now. But we'll be in touch. Okay. Thanks. I appreciate your time so much. I know it's a lot.
I appreciate you having me on. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Shoof. I'll see you soon.
See y'all.
Oh man. Wow. What a show. I'm so overwhelmed and thrilled and happy. So I hope y'all learned something. I know I did. I I feel like we have so many more tools to go out into the world with. And the funniest part is that this is the same exact stuff that I teach grown-ups, but he does it in such a like clever way that breaks it down for children. I just think it is genius. So if you have questions, reach out to me, reach out to Shoof, reach out to Ben, whatever you want to do. Send me a little message if you need something. You know I'm always here. This is the end, I guess. Oh, I'm out of wine for the second time. Jesus Christ. Here we go. How long was this episode? All right. Well, it's fine because it was an hour. I had a blast. Have a great week and celebrate your wins. I'm going to ask you for them again next week, even though no one wants to tell me what they are. I'm going to share you mine, and I hope that you share with me yours. Think about it. Get curious about your thoughts. Let's change the ones that don't serve you. I love ya. Mwah.